Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. And we're here on Monday, July 31st, and it is the first day of fall camp. So hopefully you're all excited. The football season now literally is 31 days away, almost just a month. We're going to hear from Coach Rule today, but the team, is going to hit the practice field this morning, the first of 6 times this week. They're going to practice 6 days a week under Coach Matt Rule. So those are some of the changes. They spent last night in the dorms. You could see the players move in. They had fan day, so there's a lot of kind of buzz in the air, lots of storylines. But Danny, it's the start of fall camp. So how are you feeling about that?
Great. I mean, what we've been waiting for since, quite frankly, November. And it's cool to see them in the dorms. As a team manager, I spent 5 years helping out a college football team, and I got to move in with them. And in the dorms, and all you did during those fall camp days were film, practice, and just bond with the team. So those are some of my fondest memories with the team. And it's I'm sure these guys are doing the same thing. And I just look at the dorm beds and things like that, and I wonder how some of these guys are going to fit on the beds. But hey, that's the beauty of bonding and fall camp in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like a remember the Titans
Yeah.
type of moment here for Matt Rule. So we'll see how it all pans out, but I think it's a great idea. Before we get too far into it, make sure that you guys, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. We're trying to grow our list. Thank you for all your the recent subscribers. We're trying to get to 1,000 here by the start of the season. So please, if you like our content, hit that subscribe button, get into the comments section, share it, turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of our podcasts or our live streams, which we're starting to do every Saturday. So make sure that you join us for that and check out the one that we just did this past Saturday if you weren't able to join us live. It's been great catching up with all of you new Husker fans. But now fall camp. There's lots of different storylines. Like I said, we'll get to hear from Matt Rule today. One thing that's kind of been permeating, I guess, from social media and the message boards, those are always active in, Husker Nation, is there's been talk about Miles Farmer and his kind of roster status. He was one of the guys, not the only guy that wasn't at the big fan event yesterday. So we don't want to read too much into that. We don't have any firm reporting saying anything one way or another, but there's definitely a lot of smoke about Miles Farmer not being part of this team anymore.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to, add to the rumors or whatever. But when you look at the health of Marquise Buford Jr. to start off camp, and then Miles Farmer potentially not, we don't know what his status is. The free safety position and its depth looks kind of thin. I know, we have Omar Brown and Corey Collier, but Miles Farmer brought experience to the table, and he's a guy that is a veteran in this group. He's not a newcomer. So while I have no doubt about the skills of Brown and Collier, and yes, I know Brown played last year, Miles Farmer, brought experience to the table, and it's not going to be a devastating loss, but it is definitely a notable one if true.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a guy who started a lot of games last year. It was kind of interesting because it did seem like that, like Omar Brown, had possibly passed him on the depth chart, and maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe he's going to enter the transfer portal. I mean, we really don't know at this point. It could be that he just wasn't there for the fan event because I mean, there was a lot of people. There was a lot of talk about Marcus Washington too, and then he showed up with a cast on his hand or on his wrist or whatever. So it seems like that was just an injury. So I mean, rumors just kind of take off. So we don't want to buy into that too much, but there is, especially with Miles Farmer not being there, there is kind of too much smoke to ignore it. So I feel like we'll find out pretty soon. Although Nebraska, I mean, with all these guys who have sort of left the roster, the guys that haven't left via the transfer portal, they've kind of let them just announce it on their own. It's not like they've been super diligent updating, the roster at Huskers.com. I don't think Matt Rule probably cares that the roster's updated that much, you know what I mean, as
No.
much as we do. So I don't know if he's going to say anything before Miles Farmer does, but we'll see. I don't know if there's going to be anything else on Arik Gilbert. I mean, obviously, I'm sure that he's going to be, asked about, the whole Bob Wager situation. So that's going to be kind of interesting. But in terms of what happens if Miles Farmer's not there, I mean, I just think, yeah, Omar Brown, Collier, those guys just kind of have to step up. And hopefully Buford will be on the field sooner than later. Just because he's not going to start fall camp doesn't mean he won't be ready to start the season. I've seen people talk about, oh, you can move Malcolm Hartzog over to free safety, and that it seems like they do have some of that interest, but to me that kind of depends on if some of these freshman cornerbacks are ready to go, because I don't feel great about the cornerback depth chart. Even I feel more concerned about that if you were to lose Hartzog than losing Farmer at safety.
I agree, and Hartzog to me is kind of the linchpin of the cornerback group, and he's only a sophomore. So I mean, there there is young depth at the position, but they need to develop, and so I'll be curious to see how the corner position shakes out. I mean, I'm looking at some projected depth charts, and um, at the free safety position and the strong safety position. They have, Omar Brown at strong safety, followed by Corey Collier and Phelan Sanford at free safety. They have, you know, Buford Jr., Farmer, and Ashton Hausman. So I'll be curious to see how they mix and match the safeties. And I agree the corner depth isn't great, but maybe they'll be able to make something out of it. And now we kind of are getting an idea, you know, as to why maybe they recruited so many corners in the upcoming classes to begin with.
Yeah, it definitely needed to be, revamped, the quarterback room, and maybe Tommy Hill can be, a contender there. I don't believe he's playing receiver. I think he's
No.
full back to. So, if he can be, I mean, the coaching staff last year, they talked about him as a guy that could be, drafted into the NFL as a cornerback, and then after like 2 weeks, he was playing receiver. So, I mean, I'm not sure if this staff is going to get any more out of him, but he's a guy that's at least played some football, but if you're looking at this class, it's definitely possible. But I mean, Ethan Nation's a pretty good player. Amir Stewart. These guys were all kind of ranked pretty highly. Um, Dwight Boodle is another guy. Who could have an opportunity to work his way into the mix. So that'll be interesting to watch. But Newsome, I think, regardless of where they're playing or whatever, Newsome and Hartzog are going to be the centerpieces of that secondary. Isaac Gifford too, at safety, and then
Yep.
Buford. And yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, Omar Brown is up to the task. But Collier, I think, is a guy that is not maybe talked about enough. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit, out of high school. So even though he didn't play a lot at Florida, he could play a key role this season, and we'll see kind of how that develops. And I'm sure we'll get some more information. I don't know if any of practice is going to be open to media availability today in terms of them being able to watch. I just don't remember based looking on the schedule, but I'm sure if there's guys that aren't there or that aren't on the field, we'll find out about it. So we'll see what happens with Miles Farmer.
Yeah, and I think this year in particular, it's going to be about just building the depth and getting guys ready for not only this year but for the future as well. I mean, look at the 24 class for example. That's one of the big gets was Mario Buford, and so there is pieces coming. There are recruits coming into the program. Right now, I think it's going to be about just relying on the transfers and relying on even some of the 2023 recruits to try to develop and help, fill the position. And Corey Collier is interesting to me because I thought when Nebraska landed him in December that he was going to be a good fit for the defense overall. And, now he is very much in the mix. We all thought he would be, but now he's now he's really in the mix. So I'm excited to see what a guy like Collier can do. And, it's another case of, he didn't play a lot of Florida, but maybe he can live up to his potential here.
Yeah, it's different opportunities, different systems. I mean, he's always a guy that kind of struck me. I mean, looking at his recruiting profile as like a you know versatile type, a safety slash cornerback, which could kind of fit
I thought
perfectly
the same
here
thing. Yeah.
at Nebraska. So yeah, I feel like the secondary will be just fine, and then it's up to those coaches to develop some of those freshmen that they recruited and to kind of get them ready. But that is kind of the one position I'd maybe worry about a little bit. But other than that, what are some other things that you're kind of looking to see this week out of fall camp? What are some storylines that you're following?
they talked about physicality on offense in spring ball and stuff like that. So I want to see, how much the running backs, are going to be not necessarily used because I don't think we're going to get a good judge of that in practices. But what the plan is at running back in terms of personnel and things like that. Obviously, Anthony Grant is your starting running back, and then you have a guy like Gabe Irvin who may actually, take that number one spot, given how the coaching staff talked highly of him. Who knows? I mean, this may seem kind of like an obscure storyline, but I want to see, if Ramir Johnson factors into the plans at all. Coming into camp because they talked about him very highly, at the start of training camp last year, and then he was basically an afterthought. I don't know if they plan to use him more, and then coaches didn't want to use personnel, but I'll be interested to see where a guy like Johnson factors into the room because I believe he brings a receiving element to the backfield that Anthony Grant can do, and Gabe Irvin can do, but I feel like Johnson's the better receiving back because if you have your physical running backs in Grant and Irvin, and then you have a receiving back in Johnson, and you actually use him, then that brings an entirely different element to the passing and running game, and it helps balance things out a little bit.
I think also that, Ramir Johnson's pretty good at pass protection, so
Yeah,
we'll see if that can get him on the field. Anthony Grant was okay in the passing game, but Ramir
yeah.
Johnson is just so much more of a threat. Just a more natural receiver. I know he dropped that pass against Illinois, which was a bummer, but
He
yeah,
didn't have many reps. Like,
that was really confusing that they're like, "Oh, this guy can be Brian Westbrook," and then they never played him. But there's a lot of things Mark Whipple did, and that just made no sense. So, I'm interested to see how that develops. And really now with AJ Allen being gone, they do need a third back this year. I mean, Quentin Ives is another guy that could be in the mix, and Emmett Johnson, but Ramir Johnson really could, as that number 3 guy, have a nice role this year and get like 100 touches as a back slash receiver, and I think he really could play a nice role in that kind of in that spot. So we'll see if the coaching staff kind of gives him that opportunity. I'm sure they'll give him the chance during the spring ball. I think wide receiver is a position that I'm going to be watching. How early can Malachi Coleman contribute? We've Jeff Sims already talked about how fast he's been. Him and Xavier Betts being two of the fastest guys. So how are they going to try to incorporate him early in his career? And then Thomas Fedoni, is he fully 100% like ready to go? What's his, can he make it through this fall camp and just get to game one 100%? That's a big thing for me with him and also Teddy Projaka too.
well, the health of the tight end seems to have been a big storyline over the past couple of years, right? I mean, we have these good tight ends, and it seems like they just for whatever reason can't make it past fall camp, and then the waiver situation with Arik Gilbert is interesting too. I don't know, you know, I believe there was still no definitive update on Gilbert's waiver situation, but I'll just ask you really quick. Do you think that that's something that can get fixed by the time season starts, or is he kind of in limbo until I don't want to say next season, but for the foreseeable future?
It can be, it's the NCAA, so it could come down. It could be today. It could be next week. It could be the week before the season. It could be any time. They basically have no time frame as far as
Mm,
I'm aware. And I do think that Matt Rule's right. He should be able to play. And I think here's the reason why. Because looking at last year at Georgia, he didn't play much. He did not play. It's not like he had like
right.
900 yards receiving. He didn't play a whole lot. Georgia stacked at tight end, so it made sense to transfer. The Georgia coaching staff has totally been supportive of him playing here. They have no ill will towards him, and so really at this point, the only person that is getting hurt is Arik Gilbert. And yeah, he maybe shouldn't have transferred, but he had some legitimate reasons for transferring the first time, and he's just not going to get really much of an opportunity,
Right.
with Georgia right now. So it's a dumb situation, but the NCAA is dumb. I mean,
Yeah.
it should not be. The NCAA should not be in charge of Power Five athletics. They should have nothing to do with it at this point. Because like here's, for instance, last week, the big topic of conversation was
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh getting suspended because he didn't own up, or he didn't recall, said he didn't recall, buying basically a lunch for two recruits who came to visit during, it wasn't like a visit period, so he really shouldn't have, whatever. Um, which is a minor infraction. It's not that big a deal. I'm not saying that it's not against the rules, but at the same time, it comes out, and Drake Mays also said this, but Taula, is that his name?
Yeah.
Tagovailoa.
Yep.
But anyway,
Maryland.
Tua's younger brother, the Maryland starting quarterback, said an SEC team offered him $1.5 million to enter the transfer portal and go to their team. Drake May also basically said the same thing. So it's like, is the NCAA going to investigate that? Are they going to ask Nick Saban about that? Because that's who it has to be. Because people are throwing out Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't need a quarterback. They've got Joe Milton. Like, they don't need you know what I mean? So it's not Tennessee. It's not LSU, because they've got a bunch of quarterbacks. So let's think about who in the SEC has been after quarterbacks all year in the transfer portal. Who was trying to contact Drake May? Alabama, because they don't like their quarterback situation. Who added a quarterback? They added Tyler Buchner from Notre Dame, who was basically, a low end starter. So yeah, if they could have added to his younger brother, I guarantee they would have done it.
They were also looking at Tyler Van Dyke from Miami potentially as well. So
Yep, that's another one. Yep. So it's like, come on. So is the NCAA going to go ask Nick Saban about his program enticing player? And the NCAA literally just put out a memo about this stuff like 2 weeks ago. You can't use NIL as enticements. You can't do this as enticements. And then you have guys enticing people to enter the portal. I mean, Lincoln Riley USC basically, they tamper with whoever they want,
yeah.
because these teams know and these schools know that there is no punishment coming no matter what they do. It's just ridiculous.
What did the NCAA think was going to happen? Like what did they think? Like what do they think is going on? Do you think they're? I mean, you would be stupid as a NCAA team not to at least use a little bit for enticements. I mean, like what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, once you add money to college athletics and you realize you can get a kid for, let's just say, I don't know, 500K, and he's a really good player, like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, I don't really understand. The NCAA taking the stance of integrity and academics is all BS. It's all BS. And, this is a stance that they've always had, and people have been able to see right through it. But anyway, I mean, what do you think? Like, I don't know. You open NIL, you've opened Pandora's box. I mean, does there need to be regulation? Yes, but to say that you can't use money as enticements, like that's just kind of, I don't know, short-sighted when you consider everything that's been going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna happen, and I don't see how they're gonna stop it. And so it's just really annoying what they're doing. It always has been. The NCAA's always been, they've always they've never punished people equally. They've never punished the right people. It's like Alabama's never getting the death. Notre Dame is never getting the death penalty. And you could probably throw Nebraska in that same mix, because it's a big name. It's a big money. The NCAA is about, it's about making money. That's what it is. And it was about making money on amateurs for a long time. And they're pissed off that they're having to pay people what they deserve. And,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily like it. So, I mean, there's a lot of people, at least in that realm. But at any rate, not to go down too much of a tangent, but it will be interesting to see what happens with the Eric Gilbert thing. He should be approved for this season. If not, then I don't know if we'll ever see him in a Husker uniform, because I mean, there's been talk of like NFL scouts coming to practice to like see this guy, and so who knows? He could just go to the draft right off and probably get drafted based just on his size and potential. So
I mean, at least
hopefully,
you'd have the Nebraska name attached.
yeah,
That's something.
hopefully that doesn't happen. But you never know with the NCAA. You can never predict what those guys are going to do.
I am interested to see what Thomas Fedoni does this year. This is the first year where he's been healthy, like you said. As long as he makes it through camp, fingers crossed. I am interested to see what he can add, because it seems like he's just had one unfortunate injury after another, and to have him finally be healthy and finally be able to, play, hopefully like he was brought in to do, is going to be exciting.
It will be exciting, and yeah, that's a major, I think, X factor just in the season. So, to shift our focus here, for kind of the second part of the show, I want to talk about recruiting, and it was the cookout, the big recruiting barbecue or whatever, hosted by Matt Rule and company. About 30, some odd recruits made it in. No commitments or anything. Haven't seen any, trends, but I don't think that it was, designed to be that kind of weekend. They were mostly guys that were committed, except outside of like Grant Bricks, Caleb Benning, and then a lot of 2025 recruits. But just some of the early, thoughts. I mean, Christian Jones seemed to like it. They kind of mixed things up a little bit. They had a scavenger hunt. They played a different kind of game with the parents. So I think Matt Rule and company did a nice job of mixing it up. And overall, even though nothing majors happened so far, I think it was a successful weekend. What did you think about the cookout?
Just get the bug in their ear. We want you. We want you on our team, and we want you to come see the campus. And I think anytime you can get a guy, for example, like Christian Jones on campus in state, that's important. I mean, all these cookouts and all these events that Matt Rule is doing, they have a purpose. It's not just, oh, let's throw together a cookout and let's see what lands or if this works. I mean, he's giving these recruits another opportunity to see the campus, some of them for the first time. And I think this cookout was just another example of them trying to do their due diligence in recruiting and showing the prospects that you know they want them. And I think there's a lot of good in-state kids coming up in terms of for example Jones and things like that. So the more they can get them on campus, the better. And I'm all for these cookouts. We'll see if anything comes of it. But I was very pleased to hear that it went well, and it seems, and we've talked about this before, but it seems like the coaching staff was able to make a strong impression again as well, which is always a good thing to hear.
I think they did, and new offer went out yesterday. They offered Nick Brooks, who's a top ranked player, I believe, offensive lineman out of Iowa. Another guy that was on campus, another offensive tackle out of the 2025 class, Andrew Babaloa. He said that he's considered the Huskers a lot in his recruitment. Said he had a good time at the cookout. A lot of guys were there. Daniel Kalen, Carter Nelson, Isaiah McMorris. I mean, just the whole litany. Most of the 2024 recruits were there, so I think that was a good kind of a good send off. Before the summer, send these guys back to their high school programs, and hopefully they can build some momentum, like with Grant Bricks. Hopefully they can kind of get that one over the hump. He did visit Kansas State and Oklahoma this week, so I mean, it seems like a 3-team race, but people have said that it's a Nebraska OU thing. So hopefully the Huskers can pull that one out. I think that would be a big recruitment. Alex Mansky was back on campus, for a third time. The quarterback from Iowa. That's clearly Nebraska's top target. And then
Yeah.
Caleb Benning. I mean, he visited. I think one of the first days that the dead period ended. Then he visited yesterday, and Brian Munson reported that there's a chance he could visit today for practice. So I think that's a good sign. And then another thing is that Brian Munson also mentioned in a report that Brandon Baker may have actually scheduled his visit. They're trying to follow that up and confirm it, but there's rumors that they've actually got the visit scheduled with Brandon Baker in September. So I'm sure if that is the case, we'll hear about it soon. But that would be big news, and that then I think it would be fair to say Nebraska's a player in that recruitment if that happens.
I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see him on campus and him posting the picture on social media. But Andrew Babaloa to me is really interesting. Um, he's the 7th overall offensive tackle in the 2025 class and the top player in the state of Kansas. I mean, he has a pretty solid offer list at the moment, including Miami, Minnesota, obviously Kansas and Kansas State. So I like that they're trying to aim for linemen, no matter what, high quality linemen. And um, I think that sets a good tone for the rest of the offensive line and the fact that they're making the offensive line a priority. And I also like that they're following up with Alex Mansky. I mean, Mansky mentioned before that he was really impressed with the coaching staff when he went to visit the program in June, and he appreciated how hands-on they were at their camp. So I like the fact that Nebraska is committed to landing their guy, and they're committed to landing a guy that they believe can help the program. They're following up, and they're trying to, you know, get Mansky to come here. So I like the fact that again, from a camp, they've identified a target. They're following up with Mansky, and I'll be interested to see what the next step is in regards to that.
Yeah, he was just offered by Minnesota, so a bunch of Big Ten teams, have offered him. So clearly a big Target. Stone Saunders is actually announcing this week, I think, or somewhat sometime soon. I just don't. I think he's going to Kentucky. So,
Unfortunately, yeah,
so at any rate, but I think Nebraska legitimately might have had interest in Mansky more. Just he's a just because he's not ranked as high right now. That's still pretty early in terms of the 2025 class in terms of rankings and their juniors. I mean, these guys haven't even like Mansky and Stone Saunders haven't even played their junior seasons yet. So we're gonna get a lot of like up. So I mean, this guy's probably gonna be. Look, if Nebraska's this interested in him, he's probably going to be a 4-star, at least
yeah.
a guy that's like in the top 5 or 6, ranked similar to Daniel Kalen, that type of player. So well, that's gonna be important, and some other news about him that kind of came out is he wants to decide by the end of his junior season, which I also do think sets up pretty well for Nebraska right now. They've got him on campus for 3 unofficial visits. So basically, the next step is going to be getting him back, for a game this fall, maybe a couple of times, and then try to if he's wrapping it up in December, January, or whatever, try to wrap it up from there. But if you're Nebraska and he's deciding in January or December, whenever he decides to after his season, but you've hosted him for 4 visits in the previous 6 months, I think that puts you in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, they've done their homework. I mean, they've done their homework and they've shown interest. And now I think it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see what this offense looks like. I think people are waiting for that, and I think once the coaching staff gets going, and once the season gets going, and again, I sound like a broken record until people see the product on the field. Right now they're taking shots in the dark. Once the product on the field, starts in a little more than a month, or actually a month, um, then guys will get a better idea of how they fit, and I think that could really work in Nebraska's favor.
Yeah, it sure can. And I just think seeing what the product on the field looks like, hopefully, it's a good one. I mean, especially it'd be great if they could get off to a strong start, but the schedule's not super easy. I mean, that game against Minnesota, it's going to be a tough one, but I definitely think it's winnable. Like I said, I think almost every game on the schedule is winnable, and maybe even I know that Michigan game is going to be tough, but I do feel like it's going to be just playing in Lincoln, and who knows, maybe that'll be. I don't know if there's a time set for that, but if that could be a night game like the last time Michigan came, I think that would be an ideal situation. And actually, I think Michigan's made 2 trips to Nebraska, I believe, since they've been in the Big Ten, and both times they were night games. There was like 2011 or 12 they played a night game in Lincoln. Nebraska won. And Nebraska actually, that's when they went to the Big Ten championship game. And I think that was only Michigan's second trip the last time. So another night game would be pretty awesome. And I feel like even if that is Jim Harbaugh's like return game, if that's suspension, I just feel like Nebraska's going to be better this year than people expect, even if the record doesn't show it. So I'll just say I think every game on the schedule, I think they at least have a shot to win.
Yeah, and you talk about the Michigan game under the lights would be great. Lincoln would be electric, but I truly believe that this team will be competitive this year. I have a hard time believing. I'm not going to say I do not think, but I have a hard time believing that this team will go 4-8, 3-9, or anything like that. I truly do see a bowl game in their future, and you know I think honestly, truthfully, for the sake of recruiting and things like that, they need to at least make a bowl game to show some progress moving forward.
Yeah, they do it. If you want to see my predictions, you can check them out at huskerbigred.com. But I'll tell you, I got Nebraska going 7-5, 4-5 in the Big Ten. So I tried to not be too crazy about it. I tried to think there's, a game or two that, they could win that I might not expect and that they, could lose that I might not expect. But I mean, that first game against Minnesota, I have them losing, but I do think I think it'll be a close, like a 3-point loss. I think they'll cover the spread. They'll play well, and then I think they're going to come out and just beat the crap. I mean, I'm not too bad, but I think Nebraska's like going to physically dominate Colorado, and then I feel like they're going to go into that Michigan game 3-1, with Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. So you never know. Nebraska's going to have some momentum. Should be a fun game, and I just hopefully we have that kind of season, and we can springboard into 2024 and having Nebraska football being back to what it should be, which is just a winning program, whatever that looks like. Championships, no champion. Nebraska should be like top 25 and winning, and I think Matt Rule will get us there sooner rather than later.
Lord knows we predicted this for the past 5 seasons. It's got to stick at some point, right? I mean, I think this is the year, though. I feel confident in what Matt Rule is bringing to the program, and I feel confident in this coaching staff. So, knock on wood. I think this may be the year that we at least win, and then we can build from there. At least get a bowl game, show some sign of progress, show recruits and even your own team that this program is on the way up, and then just continue to build from there, especially with a pretty damn good 2024 class coming in.
Yep, and a solid class going forward. So we'll wrap it up there, folks. We've got the first day of fall camp starting today, so make sure you're checking out HuskerBigRed.com for all your news and analysis and opinions on Nebraska football. Join us for our stream this Saturday, our live stream this Saturday. We'll get back at you with a specific time, but make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, let us know in the comments what you think, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.